In this set of slides tonight, I'm talking about annotating price charts, which is what most of us do with bull charts when we look at the price chart of a stock or an index. And I'll be talking about how to easily record copious notes using BullCharts software. For some of you, you might have encountered difficulties with doing this sort of thing, or some of you might not have. What I want to cover tonight is basically when we're looking for stocks to buy and we study the price chart and we record our analysis and observations on the chart and in notes, what sort of observations are we talking about and what are the options for recording them? And I'm happy to accept that some of you are quite experienced technical analysts and at using bull charts. Some of you advanced to an advanced level, some not so, but there's probably also some not so advanced, not so experienced people listening in, and some people who are perhaps starting all of this afresh for the first or second time. So I've got to try to adjust the wording and the content here to address all of those levels so that we don't lose anybody. When I study the charts, this is what I'm looking at, and I do this at least on a weekly basis. And I'm looking at a few different angles, if you like. I'm looking at a daily chart initially, looking for trends, trend lines, levels of support and resistance, and chart patterns. Then I look at a weekly chart, which I keep referring to as the Weinstein, the Stan Weinstein version or viewpoint of the market. A weekly chart with 30-week moving average. I also look at momentum indicator on a weekly chart. I look at Twiggs money flow. I look at the Guppy multiple moving average. That's a daily version of GMMA on weekly candles. And I'll show you that later. I also look for candle patterns and how one candle relates to the one previous and two previous, and volume. So I look at all of those sorts of things. If I was to do this study and look at all of those things and use the default bull charts and put lines and studies and comments and everything all over my charts, it would actually look very complicated. So I've needed a different way to do it to the default method in bull charts. And in this session, in the next few minutes, I'm going to consider a multitude of different analysis studies and a couple of different options for recording those sorts of details. And most of you will be familiar with the IntelliCharts feature, maybe not so the other one that I'll be spending a bit of time on. And tonight, I'm very happy to take questions as we go, rather than wait till the end. At some point, though, you might preempt what's coming, and I might ask you to hold off on the question. But please, if you've got any questions, jump into the chat box and at least simply put your hand up. That's the only way we can put our hand up with GoToMeeting. Jump into the chat box and say something, and we can pause and have a look at the question. And hopefully I've got an answer. If I don't have an answer, then maybe someone else around the table does have. Please remember there's no advice tonight. This is all for your education. Hopefully everyone will learn something. Here's what I like to do. On a weekly basis for index and for stocks, I view the bull charts templates that I've got and I make notes. And using bull charts templates is easy to do. Now, in my bull charts, I've got quite a few templates set up, and this screenshot around the middle here is a portion of my template toolbar where I've got a number of buttons or options, template buttons set up on the toolbar. And listed at the bottom here is a brief summary of what each of them is. And later on in this set of slides, I'll go through each one so you can see each one of them and understand a bit about what it is that I'm doing. Here's actually what my template W1, the first one, looks like. This is a plain line chart daily, and for this example, I'm using the All Ords Index. And you can see from the time scale here, the axis across the bottom, it starts in January this year and the peak into February. The big fall into March, mid to late March, the rally, and then a congestion period. And what I've done here is I've put my typical simple analysis studies onto this particular chart to capture them and record that going forward. And all I've got here is a a resistance level at the top of the market. This could be an analysis of a stock, might not have to be the index. So that line could be resistance going forward. Another red line here across the highs in August, because that could be resistance as well. A green line I've got there underneath all of those as support. Then I've got in the middle there a blue shaded rectangle area, which I've called a congestion range, because for a few months the index did seem to be rather congested there. And a couple of trend lines, the green dotted line rising here, uptrend line, and a red downtrend line in here across the top of the price action, falling down from mid-late August into September. So that's my template W1. Then by clicking on the next button on my toolbar template, I pull up the W1 candle version, and here I've got candles similar to the last one. Notice that here I've still got that red resistance line shown, I've got the support line, green one shown, I've got the congestion range rectangles still shown, because I'm using IntelliCharts to record all of these and save them for me and redisplay them on the next chart and the next one for the same stock. On this one, I've actually added two moving averages, a 50-day and a 200-day. I learnt quite some time ago that a number of people look at those. I never worked out why. It dawned on me in recent months why people do that. So I think it's useful to have a look at that as well. I also look for chart patterns in case I can see any on these sorts of charts. This is my template W2, the Weinstein view of the world. So this is a weekly chart now. So these are weekly candles from February falling into March and then rallying. And notice on here, it is weekly, it's candles. I've got a 30-week simple moving average. That's that blue line across the middle, simple moving average. The dotted line is an exponential, 30-week exponential moving average. I know that Weinstein talked about 30-week moving average, and he didn't really say whether it was simple or exponential that he uses. And there has been some discussion about that amongst our ATAA colleagues, and I continue to use both because I'm still not convinced one is better than the other. And of course, from a Weinstein point of view, the stage analysis across the bottom is useful to have. So I've got stage analysis included. Notice though, when I look at this template, I don't really need to see the horizontal red resistance line and the support lines or any chart patterns. That complicates the chart, because from a Weinstein point of view, I'm not interested in all of that. So that's where I start to get a bit desirous of not having IntelliCharts running. And as I proceed on through my other templates, it just gets more and more complicated by adding more and more observations and annotations to the chart. So BullCharts templates are good, but even though they do provide a quick way to simply eyeball the basic chart and do some basic analysis, as I add more, it gets too complicated. So what I do is I save the price charts, and that's one of the key things I'll be talking about in a moment. Okay, so here's the first one. This is a chart that some of you would have seen because I share this with my own Toolbox subscribers each weekend. And this is my W1, my first one, but with a whole lot of comments and annotations I've added each week over time for a period of time. And notice on here that what I've done, as well as adding some text boxes to explain what it is and a copyright notice because I share it, and a box of comments at the bottom, I've got that blue rectangle, I've got some horizontal resistance lines, support line. I color those green and red, red for resistance, green for support. In there I've also got a trend ruler. And the trend ruler helped me to understand that over 10 bars back in early October, the index went up 6.72%. Now that's to that close on the black candle. It would have been more than 6.7% going up to the white candle the day before or the day after. But to go up 6.7% over a 2-week period, that's about 3% a week, that's quite a big move for any index. Often I'd be not surprised if the index move was 1 or 2% in a week, but as much as 6% seems a bit much. And a number of people might have thought that that's too far to go and that the index needs to bide some time before moving further or maybe retrace in the meantime. Anyway, that's my W1 template equivalent saved as a price chart. I'll come back in a few slides' time and explain how we actually do this and disentangle all of this stuff from IntelliCharts. I'll come back and explain that. But first go through a couple of the charts that I've saved so you can see what sort of details we're talking about. So this is my saved chart of the Weinstein view of the world. And it's fairly simple in that I'm using a weekly, up here somewhere it says weekly, that says daily. It's actually a weekly chart. Yep. Just to confuse people, I've actually got both on there for a couple of reasons, but that black line you can see is the All Ords weekly, even though I've got daily time frame hidden behind the scenes. Then I've got those two moving averages I mentioned before with some comments to indicate which one's which. The other thing to remember too is that this blue moving average, simple moving average, up here on the pane title bar, we can see which one of those elements across the top represents the simple moving average. It's the one that's underlined in blue, which is that first one. MACS30 underlined in that bluish color. The next one there is underlined in green. So that matches that green exponential moving average. And it's useful that those items across that title bar have that colored underline. That's happened in the last couple of versions of BullCharts. The other thing we can do, just as an aside, here's a BullCharts tip. The other thing we can do is we can right-click on any one of those entries on the title bar and see some options from a drop-down menu that will allow us to either delete that from the chart or look at the properties or do a couple of other things with it. So if you weren't aware of that, that's something that you can play with. So there's my Weinstein view of the world. On my next chart, my W3 template, essentially, this is momentum. In the top portion here, this is a weekly chart of the All Ords again, with that blue consolidation rectangle, congestion range. This time I'm actually writing in whether the peaks and troughs on the chart are higher or lower than the one before. I'm doing that on the index above and on the momentum below, looking for divergence. So the solid blue line here is divergence, is momentum. That solid blue line is momentum. And the dotted line it's the moving average of momentum. In BullCharts, it's an indicator called momentum smoothed. And it took me a while to find that some years ago. It's not possible, when you add a moving average of the price to the price chart, it works the same way as adding a moving average to volume and a moving average to trades and a moving average to value. But you can't add it to momentum using that same specific method in BullCharts. You need to go and find the indicator called momentum smoothed and add that or insert it to your chart. And if you want it to appear like this, on the momentum pane, you need to specifically mention in BullCharts that you want it applied to the momentum pane and not to a new pane and not to the price pane. And if anyone's not sure how to do that, yell out later on and we can have a look at how to do that. So on this momentum chart, I'm mostly looking for a couple of conditions, and they're up in this box up here on the left, whether momentum is trending up or down, whether momentum is above or below its own moving average, and the possibilities of divergence. And when momentum is falling, and the moving average of momentum is falling, we know that that's indicating weakness in the share price, remembering exactly what momentum is. The next template that I've used as a basis for this chart, Twiggs money flow, is very similar to the previous one, momentum one. Price above, weekly All Ords. Down here we've got Twiggs money flow, and I've highlighted the Twiggs money flow, the TMF 0 line. I've got that flagged with a a bit of text, a text box, so that I know where it is, because according to Colin Twiggs, it is important whether the TMF is above or below that zero line. That's important. And also whether the TMF is trending up or down. And he says that that tells us something about this, the short-term or medium-term buying or selling pressure within the market. So I look for those sorts of indications in this chart. This next one is the Guppy multiple moving average. And I like to look at that and see if that's telling me anything. And of course, for those of you who know GMMA, you'll know that Daryl Guppy has explained to us that it's 6 short-term moving averages, the blue ones, and 6 long-term red ones. And they've all got specific parameters for each moving average for different reasons. And there's a gap. There's a decisive gap between the blues and the reds, the difference between the 15 and the 30 period moving average. And Guppy tells us that on the left here, where we've got the red averages rising nicely across the first part of the chart, and the blue ones gently compressing and expanding, and the gap between them, Daryl Guppy defines that as being ideal conditions to indicate a healthy uptrend, which is what's been forming. This chart is done as of a day or two ago, so we can see that the GMMA here is indicating the same sort of conditions going forward, except that in the last day or two, some of the reds have started to flatten, which is not a good indication. Anyway, I digress. So Guppy multiple moving average, I look at that and make some observations and put those details on the chart as well. I also look at candle patterns. These are weekly candles, and I only show about 6 or 7 of them, and I look for how they relate to the one before and the one after. I also look at volume, and this is based on the volume template that I've got. But once again, like the other ones we've just looked at, with IntelliCharts turned off, I've saved the price chart. And I've put icons on the chart here to match notes that I put into the big text box that I've got on the side there. And I've also marked in the ASX options and futures expiry dates with those little bells. They're icons out of the standard icon library in BullCharts. So I know when options expiry is, and sometimes we know there is high volume on those options expiry days or the day after that explains the volume. Sometimes there isn't, which is very interesting. But the other thing that I've noticed on this particular daily chart over the last several months is that the volume bars are very insightful, because we often have on Mondays very low volume, low compared to the previous days and those following during the week. And on this chart, there are several examples of relatively low volume Mondays. And here's a really bad one, 5th of October. You can see how it's a lot less. Perhaps I should also mention here, while we're looking at this, that these volume bars are coloured red and green in BullCharts. There are 2 ways to do that. The way I've got it set is, as it says in the box there, I've got them green for an up day and red for a down day. So that's compared with previous close. Is it higher or lower than previous close? So there's volume, and I've got annotations and comments on there as well. I'm just going to pause for a moment because there's a question in the chat box. Dennis, thank you for that question. Yes. In the next few slides, I will be talking about a key difference between IntelliCharts and saving the chart file. And the question that we've been asked here is, when the data is downloaded every night, does that get updated? And yes, the short answer is yes, it does, because what IntelliCharts does is it saves information about what's on the screen. And when we do a file save here, it saves basically the same stuff. So it doesn't save the price data. The price data is always in the database. It's not duplicated. Hence, all of the little files that are the IntelliCharts files or the chart files that are saved, they're all very, very small because there's no price data in there. So hopefully that answers the question. If not, there will be a point in a few minutes where that comes up and we can cover it again in more detail. Now, the last template I use, which is the basis of this particular chart, is a 10-minute chart. And I find the 10-minute chart useful to look at each week, the end of each week, to see where the big moves have been during the week. And when you have a good look at this, you can see in a number of places that there have been big moves up or down. Like 1st of September, we had a big fall on the open, but then there was a really big rise, or not quite as much, either at the end of that day or the open the next morning. And then 2 days later, another big fall. So this tells us whether during the day we've got these big moves at the open or close, or whether they're happening progressively during the day. So sometimes that's useful. Sometimes we might have a spike like that during the day related to a news event. I find that useful to know as well. So those are the sorts of things that I analyze and save off in different indiscrete files. Why do I do all this? Some of you might be sitting there thinking, why do I go to this trouble of doing all of this sort of stuff? Well, I do all of that for the index and also for stock purchases, because all of my trading is discretionary, and the rules for my discretionary trading include a lot of what we've looked at here, plus some other things that I haven't told you about tonight. But by doing all this analysis, I get several views of what's actually going on. By doing this sort of study based on the index, I get a good feeling for what the index is doing. Now, theoretically, the index ought to be the market, but as a lot of us realize, the index is dominated by a handful of big cap stocks and can be misleading. So if we were to analyze one index, perhaps we should also analyze not just the All Ords or the XJO, but maybe also the Small Ords or a couple of other indexes to see if they're performing the same way or different. The other thing that I can do by doing this analysis is draw some sort of conclusion about the bullishness or bearishness of the index that I'm looking at in the market, or of the security, the stock itself. If I'm looking at a possible share purchase, I can draw a conclusion about that. And that can be useful, I find. And some of my discretionary trading rules, as I mentioned, use some of these sorts of observations. So in the previous slides there, what I've done is shown some of the chart tools and line study tools that are available to us in BullCharts without stopping to spend any time on any of them. So for those of you who haven't explored BullCharts fully, especially those who are newer to BullCharts, there's a whole lot of stuff, a whole lot of different tools available to us in BullCharts that are so easy to apply to the chart. One of the most common ones I've been using tonight and saving away there are text boxes. And with a text box, you can change the color and size of the text, as well as have a border or no border, a fill or no fill, and you can anchor the text box to a date, or you can untick that box in the properties and let the date be, let that box be fixed at that position on the screen. Here's a tip and a word of warning if you ever do that. If you do like I do, and do most of your work on a desktop computer like I'm doing now with a large square monitor, and then sometimes take the saved charts or IntelliCharts off onto a laptop where the screen is not so tall, you might find any of the text boxes that have not been anchored to a date, when you try to view them on the laptop, if they were across the bottom of your window on the desktop, then you might find on your laptop they're missing. That's because they are off the bottom of the screen. They're still there, but they're too far down off the screen because BullCharts remembers the pixel location of these items relative to the top left corner of the screen. And if you've got something too far down, then on your laptop, it won't be shown. The only way to accommodate that is on your desktop, make sure that you don't have any text boxes that low on your chart and have it not anchored to the date. If things are anchored to the date, it shouldn't be a problem. It'll move around. Some of the other things available in BullCharts are a whole variety of lines. Across the bottom of the screen here, I've got a screen print. This is a snapshot of the line studies toolbar. I undocked it from around the edge of my window and dragged it into the window, and I took this snapshot. So all of these lines, interval, ray, vertical, crosshair, parallel, band, etc., they're all behind one of these toolbar buttons. We've got rectangles, ellipses, parabolas. We've got Fibonacci tools. One button there is devoted to Fibonacci tools. We've got the range information and compound candles. They can be very useful if we're looking at several bars or candles together. There's a range of regression tools. There's measurement tools to measure time, value, percentage, and the ruler. And I did use the trend measurement ruler, one of the charts we looked at a few minutes ago. Towards the end of the toolbar, we've got alerts and icons. For those of you who have not yet explored the alerts feature, I know some of you really like alerts and do use the alerts fairly heavily. There's also icons. That's that flag. That's the icons toolbar button. I'm going to pause for a moment while I have a quick drink and ask if there are any questions about anything we've covered there so far. No questions? Okay, let's press on. Gather my thoughts. Okay, let's now think about analysing the charts and making notes and annotations and whatever on the chart the way you'd like to do, and the three different options for capturing them for future reference. So what are the options? And when I talk about annotations, for some of you it might be fairly obvious, but I use the word annotations to refer to any and all of these sorts of things. All of the things listed on that previous slide about the line studies and tools and things in BullCharts, I call all of those things annotations. And IntelliCharts and the File Save As feature should be able to capture and record all of those. So in BullCharts, we can capture all of those sorts of annotations in IntelliCharts, use the IntelliCharts feature, which itself has an extra option. And I'll show you in a moment what that is. Just to digress for a moment, we've got a question from Paul about Twiggs money flow. Is it the same as money flow index in the standard BullCharts indicators? Paul, no, it's not. The Twiggs money flow that I use uses the formula as provided by Colin Twiggs on the Incredible Charts website, and it's different to the regular money flow. The regular money flow, I think, does not factor in volume, but the Twiggs money flow is a version that does factor in volume to avoid some sporadic cuts, some spikes and changes in the money flow. And Colin explains all of that on one of his web pages. So looking at recording annotations, we've got IntelliCharts, and there's two options with IntelliCharts. We've also got the menu option we can use to save the annotations, save the chart file as, and the other option that was introduced a few years ago that perhaps some of you don't know about is the chart memo feature. And I'll explain that a little bit later. I've got a slide that explains what the chart memo is. The other thing that we should be happy to do, not worry about, is having multiple charts open for each stock. That shouldn't be a problem, as in a workspace. That shouldn't be a problem. And in terms of having different analyses and different annotations for different time periods, then there are ways to handle that with IntelliCharts and the file save as. So all of that's covered. So let's talk for a moment about IntelliCharts and how easy it is. It is automatically enabled by default. For a new user getting BullCharts, it's already on, and when people start using bull charts and put trend lines on the chart and text boxes and things, go to another stock, then come back again, all of their annotations appear again. It's IntelliCharts that's doing that. And IntelliCharts is the feature in BullCharts that captures all of those annotations and stores that information in a separate text file. And it's actually stored differently for each different logged on Windows user. So if you are the only person who logs onto your computer and uses BullCharts, ignore the next little snippet. But if you've got a couple of people who log into Windows on your computer and use BullCharts, then you will both have different sets of IntelliCharts. They won't be shared, they're not the same. Not many people do that, I understand. So IntelliCharts is easy, especially if your analysis is simple, not too complex, and or the same analysis and comments apply across multiple time periods, daily, weekly, monthly. If it's not that, then we do need plan B. But let's for a moment talk about that extra option in IntelliCharts. Because in IntelliCharts, if you want to have different annotations for different time periods, daily, weekly, monthly, then all you've got to do is go to the BullCharts menu option, Tools, Preferences, IntelliCharts, and on the IntelliCharts tab, tick that second box that says Save different IntelliCharts for each time period. So what that means is for each time period, that is for daily, for weekly, for monthly. If you've got intraday data, then the same thing applies to intraday time periods, 2 hour, hourly, half hourly, 10-minute, 5-minute, whatever. You can have a different IntelliChart stored for each of those time periods. So there is that option in BullCharts with IntelliCharts turned on if you want to use it. Okay, so if IntelliCharts...
Robert?
Yes.
Sorry, that second choice on your previous slide.
Yes, Alec?
You just save time axis settings. What's the implication of that?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask that.
Oh, sorry, I'll withdraw the question.
Alec, that's a good question. I've played with that once or twice. I've worked out that I didn't have a use for it, so I've ignored it, and I've dutifully forgotten what it means, so I don't really know. One way to perhaps find out is to revert to the help file, and don't forget these days the BullCharts help file is in the knowledge base online, and I can show you the knowledge base shortly because the IntelliCharts chapter does explain all about IntelliCharts, and that could be explained on that page. So Alec, can you remind me of that towards the end of this presentation, and I'll jump out
Okay.
and we'll pull up a browser. I've already got it saved and ready to go to share, so we'll do that later. Thank you. Okay, so if IntelliCharts is not really coping with all of the information you're putting up on the chart for that stock, don't forget that the IntelliCharts information gets saved by each stock. Then, if it doesn't cope with it very well, you can turn it off. And on that previous slide, we did see where to turn it off. All you do, follow the menu option, and that first tick box, use IntelliCharts, just untick it. That will turn off IntelliCharts. And you can all at any time come back and turn it on again. It's easy to do, no drama. And if you want to find your IntelliCharts files for whatever reason, tonight I'm not planning to show you where that is or how to find it. We can do that if someone asks, but I've not included that in this presentation. Okay, so if we turn IntelliCharts off, then what happens? We do our analysis and then use the menu option File Save. And when you do File Save, the current security has information saved about it, unique to that security. And it stores the annotations on the chart, the layout of the chart, the time period, the indicators, so the time period is daily or weekly, monthly, whatever, the indicators you've got shown, and the various chart panes, if you've got several panes like volume, momentum's different, MACD might be different, RSI and so on, all saved for that one price chart. And the next time you open this file, the latest price data will be displayed with it, and the saved annotations will be added to the price chart. So if it's a week or 2 or 3 weeks since you last looked at that particular saved chart file, the next time you open it, you will see the latest available data because they're pulled up separately onto the BullCharts screen. So as I mentioned, when you save the file, it creates a small text file to get saved, and doing this is not much different to using Microsoft Word or Excel, or, because I hate them, I use LibreOffice and their functional equivalents, and you'll need to specify a file name and a folder in which to save that file. Now, when I started doing this 13, 14 years ago, it took me a while to work out that the best place for me to save those files was in a folder structure starting here. So what I've done is, if you have a look at where your BullCharts files are, the templates, the custom indicators, custom scans, and so on, what I've done is I've created a subfolder under that, and the subfolder I've just called My Files. And then I save into that folder, and every time I close BullCharts and open it again, all of the work that I do, my templates, my indicators, my scans, my saved files, they're all under that same folder directory, file structure. And then you use File Open to open that saved file. I've got so many of those files now. I'm not going to show you my folder structure. It's quite lengthy and complicated. Because of the seminars and workshops I've done over the years, I've got lots of them. But one thing I found useful was, if you've got a big handful of these files that you open routinely, like in Microsoft Word and Excel, you can open up recent ones. Under the File menu option, instead of New or Open or whatever, one of the options there is File Recent Files, and have a look at a list. Have a look at a list of all of the recent files you've opened. Now, by default, that list comprises only about 10, I think, 10 or 15 entries. I've updated mine to be 30. And to do that's one of the many options in BullCharts Preferences. Under the General tab, number of recent files to show. You can change that. I've not yet found a limit. I could have done more than 30, but 30 is a reasonable limit on my screen. So to open recent ones, Files, Recent Files, and you'll see this list. Okay, another option in BullCharts to save these sorts of things, the annotations, the observations, the studies and things, is by way of text. Now, a lot of the things like trend lines and things you can't save in a chart memo. It's all text-related comments that are related to that particular stock. That's the chart memo window pane. Now, you can open this chart memo pane using the BullCharts menu item view, and from the drop-down menu use Show Chart Memo or Control W. And you'll see this blank space at the bottom of your screen where you can type information. And you can see there's two tabs here, the Memo tab and the Volume tab. It's simply another tab like an indicator pane. That's another place to record some sort of things, comments, primarily about the stock you're looking at. Don't forget the Layer Manager is there and is useful as well. For those of you who haven't seen the Layer Manager, we can talk about that and have a play with it. If a chart is rather detailed and complex, then the Layer Manager can be very, very useful. And it uses the elements in the pane title bar. The two of these things are related to each other. Let's have a quick look at where the Layer Manager is. You can view the Layer Manager by using the menu option View and Panels. That's in the Security Manager, Scan Manager, down the bottom. There's the menu there. Here it is on the left-hand side. It's actually larger on the next slide. Here's the Layer Manager. on the right-hand side, and down the bottom, you can see the 6 tabs that go with that control panel, Security Manager, Scan Manager, and so on. But that can be very useful. So just in summary, that's all I've got in terms of prepared stuff. So we can come back and have a chat about anything there and demonstrate things and move on shortly to tips if you like. But just to summarize, IntelliCharts is simple to use. IntelliCharts has that extra option, save different time periods. You can turn it off and save the file, or you can use the chart memo feature or the layer manager. They can be useful as well. So that's all the slides that I've got. I'm now showing the my browser window and the BullCharts knowledge base. Now, don't forget that this is the URL to the BullCharts knowledge base, kb.bullcharts.com.au. And when you get there, this is the screen. Now, a year ago, there were a lot of knowledge base entries here in one long list, not grouped together under headings. One of the things that Brendan's had me to do in the last year or so has been to go through this and tidy it up a bit and add more keywords and group things. So I've done that. And in the search here, if you type in IntelliCharts, E-N-T-E-L-L-I-C, there's a list of search results already that come up, Chapter 6 IntelliCharts. And I've noticed in my Firefox, when you scroll down, that there's a glitch here. And some of you might have noticed this. I'm not sure if you have.
Yes.
I've tried exactly the same thing in Google Chrome, and guess what? Google Chrome works okay. So it's a glitch in Firefox, and I haven't explored it any further. This is essentially the Chapter 6 out of the BullCharts manual. And for those of you who bought BullCharts a few years ago, you might have paid the $40 to get a printed hard copy of the BullCharts manual, version 3.6 I think it was, or 3.8. It was about 1.5 inches thick, 400 pages or thereabouts. And it's maintaining it's become rather complicated. So what Brendan's done is he's put it up here in the knowledge base. If we scroll down to, these first few bits here are demonstrating how it works. There's IntelliCharts per time period. And Alec, we noticed that third option about time is not there.
Doesn't appear. You're right.
So maybe this screenshot was from an older version. I'm scrolling down further to see if it's been added. When are IntelliCharts saved and loaded? That might be useful if you want to understand the ins and outs of IntelliCharts. When are they overwritten? When are they loaded? IntelliCharts in detail. Combining rules. This is all the programmatic stuff behind the scenes. A widget box. I didn't know we had a widget box. Scale parents. Don't know what they are. There you go. Alec, I'm sorry that box isn't mentioned.
No, that's what I found.
Robert, David here. I've got a question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you color volume when you add volume to your charts on the, say, in the bottom pane?
Yep.
Can you color it for green for up days and red for down days? I find when you try to insert volume, it just comes up with one color. Is there another volume indicator that has color for up and down days or up and down weeks?
David, I notice here that the volume properties, we've got a couple of options: price change since previous and price change since open. Now, when you say up, down, or down day, I think what you're referring to is...
That's what I'm looking for. So you got that on your volume properties, righto?
Yeah.
I'll have to go and have a look at that.
Price change since open.
So when I try and insert volume, it just gives me a one color. So I just wondered.
When you insert volume,
Yeah. If you go and put insert volume,
volume multiplier. Yeah, okay.
yeah.
I've actually, just looking at that, I've got 6 options for the colour on the volume chart.
Have you?
Yeah, if you actually click on the bars of the volume and then select properties from the box that comes up and go to colour, you've got 6 options: single colour, price change since previous, price change since open, higher, lower, inside, outside, yeah, higher, lower trend.
Righto. I can't find the properties. I'll have to have a look at that, Alec. Righto. I'll just have to explore that. Righto.
Now, David, I can see where some people might come unstuck here. It is possible to delete volume off the chart. Now, one way to do that is to right-click on a blank part of the price chart and show volume or not.
Oh, righto. Yeah.
Now, if anyone has ever deleted volume and tried to get it back by doing insert volume, then they will get what you've explained. And let's just try that. If I insert volume this way, do I still get the option here when I look at properties? Yeah, it's still the same.
Yeah, righto. I don't seem to have that feature, but I'll have to explore. I'll just have a play around.
You don't have that.
I've just done it on a chart that I use, and it's come up nicely with up and down days, green and red.
Yeah.
Righto. All right. Well, it must be me.
Yeah, but if you switch, I just had a bit of a play as well. If you switch off that show volume and turn it back on, it defaults back to the standard volume display. So
it does, yes. And there's no pane title bar across the top of the volume pane. On my default template, I've added it so that I can see what's actually shown. I can see the last value for volume as well as whatever indicators I've got on that pane. Don't forget you can right-click on that pane, and the bottom option is pane properties, and you can show the pane title bar or turn it off. And you can do this with any of the panes around the price chart. Indicator parameters, data, timestamp can also be added into that top right corner. So pane properties, and they're different for each pane. And of course, once you add something like MACD into its own pane, or momentum, there's MACD. That's in its own pane, and it's got its own pane properties title bar.
Yeah, I think, Robert, on the volume one, if you just click in the panel, you just get the pane properties. But if you actually click on a volume bar,
yes,
and then right-click, you get the daily volume properties.
Yes.
And in there, you've got the 6 options for the colours.
Yes, Alec, that's quite right. Yes.
Righto.
Yeah, and that's a good point to make. One of the things that some people overlook is that, and Paul has mentioned this in the chat box a few minutes ago, he's touching on the fact that one way to look at it is in bull charts, if you've got a lot of, maybe what I'll do is open up a chart that's rather complicated. This is one of the charts I showed before. And in the layer manager, you can see I've got a whole lot of elements on the chart. Now, every bit of text, every icon, every whatever in here is an element on the chart, and they're all listed here on the right. And some of them, the indicators especially, are listed across the pane title bar. There are properties for every one of those. And if you click on one, and as Paul has said, you can hover your mouse over it, and there might be a drop down that explains what it's about. I've turned that off. That's called tips. I better turn it back on. Tools preferences. It's on the other monitor. Tools preferences, show chart tool tips when moving mouse over it. I turn mine off because over here, this text box I've got is rather full. And I've actually worked out what the character limit is for those text boxes. It's 32,000 odd characters. Some of you will understand how we can arrive at that readily. In here, if we hover the mouse, we can see some information about each of these. We can right-click on any of them. If we right-click, we can change the order, put one in front or behind the other. You can see in the top, for instance, I've got a text box here behind the candles. I can right-click and change the order to bring it to the front. So there are those sorts of features in here and properties as well. Properties like color, text, parameters, border, show border or not, fill the background or not. They're all there. When you select one of these, it actually tells you in the layer manager which item you're looking at. It's this one. And I can selectively delete it. We got to here because we talked about volume colors, yes, and properties. Yeah, and it depends where you right click. That's important. Okay, yeah, next.
The other thing, Robert, probably even easier, if you're in the layer manager, if you go to the layer manager and you've got XAO daily volume there, if you right click on that, you've lost it. Yeah. If you right click on that, it actually gives you the various properties that you can then adjust.
Good on you, Alec.
Yeah, now that's a good point too, Alec. Thanks for raising that. This is one of the charts we looked at before. This is the Weinstein view where I've got a lot fewer elements in the chart. And the usefulness with the layer manager is I can untick these boxes and selectively hide things on the chart if the chart's complicated. Now, having realized that, if you click on an item in the layer manager, then that element on the chart is selected. The little square handles appear on it.
Yep.
And by the same token, the coloured items across the pane title bar here, if you click on one of those, then the item should be highlighted and you can change the properties from up here. So they're the candles. Here's the price. Here's the moving average. If I right click on this, I can change the parameters, properties for that moving average. That's the same as doing a right click on the moving average itself.
Yeah, if you had a chart there with volume on it, or show volume, you could. Okay, now in your layer manager, go down to XAO daily volume and right click.
Yep.
And go to properties.
Yep.
Right color.
Yep.
Yeah. There you are. There's your 6 options.
Yeah. Yep. And that should be exactly the same as right-clicking on one of the volume bars.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, the same thing. And
Robert,
yes, John.
I put the volume bars actually on my price chart.
Yep.
Because I wanted to get them to a maximum size so as I can read them.
Yep.
And I've squeezed the volume box at the bottom right down to about 1/4 of an inch high, so all I can really read is the volume that's gone through.
Yep.
You know, on the right-hand side, the little number there. Where the price bars appear now on my price chart, I don't have the volume plot properties with all the 6 colours. All I get is a choice of blue.
Yes.
Is that because I'm running version 4.6 and not 5.1?
No, I think that's because it sounds as though you've done what David's explained before. You've inserted volume as though it's an indicator.
Yeah.
So if you insert volume and go next, you can specify where to put it and put it on the price chart.
That's what I did.
Yeah, and when you do that, it looks as though you don't have access to the...
No.
No, you don't have colour properties.
Oh, there's no...
We'll have to ask Brendan to make that an alteration perhaps in the next one.
Yes.
Going on from that as well,
Yeah.
you were talking about in the text boxes
Yeah.
on the charts, you can change the colour, font size, etc., etc. I can't do that either in my text boxes. Is that again because I'm running version 4.6?
No. No.
If I just if I go down on the left-hand side and pick up the capital A, click on that, click on the chart. Oh, I've got to get rid of that first.
Yeah.
Click on the A, click on the chart. I get a text box there. Oh, sorry, I can change the font.
There's 4 tabs on the Note Properties dialog box. Parameters and border.
Yeah. Border only gives me show the border and colour.
Yep.
And fill in the background.
Yes, correct.
Oh yeah, then there's the fonts on the, yeah, okay. Sorry, I'll withdraw that question. Thank you, it's all there.
That's all right. That's all right. And
thank you.
And there's a change that happened in BullCharts a couple of years ago, which might have been to do with the operating system. Now, when you've got some text and you go to change the font, then if you have a good look at the font, and scroll down this list, it's actually giving you a preview of what the font will look like.
Yeah.
Now, if I remember rightly, a few years ago, BullCharts never did that. Now, these fonts, I'm guessing, will be whatever is installed on your computer, not a set of standard fonts. If you've installed additional fonts, and I've installed additional fonts here for use with some newsletters that I've typed up, if you've got a special font you've installed, you could put that in here, bring it up on the chart, and it might be something like something that looks odd. Comic Sans would be a good one, wouldn't it? Let's just put that in here. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. But if you use a font and save it on your computer and then save that chart file or IntelliChart and send it to someone else, it might not display for them if they don't have that font file installed on their computer as well. Now, for anyone who understands font files and how to install a font, that'll make sense. If you've never done it, then it won't make sense. So there's a little bit about that. Shane's asked a question in the chat box. If we've finished our discussion with that, I'll have a look at Shane's question because it's a good one. Shane has asked, can files be removed or cleaned up from the recent files folder because they were not what you wanted? Oh. Shane, I've got no idea. I've never tried that. Shane, there probably is a way to remove all of those from the list. You can probably remove all of them, but I don't think you can remove any individually. But having said that, I wonder if we go to Tools Preferences, if I change my setting from 30 back to 10, that'll show me a shorter list. There's only 10. Now, if I close BullCharts and open it again, will I see my original 30 again? I don't know. I've never wanted to try that, never needed to. Recent files, all 30 is still there. I'm guessing that list of files is saved either in a BullCharts system file or it's in the Windows registry. I don't know which. Shane, I don't know. If anyone knows the answer, feel free to let us know. I can't hear any answers rushing. Is anyone there? Hello?
Yeah. We're here, but we've got no answers.
No, that's a curly one. Shane, thanks for that. If there's nothing else, then let's draw the meeting to a close. We'll leave the session running for anyone who wants to have a chit chat for the next few minutes. But thank you everyone for your interest tonight and your participation. Meeting's closed. We'll meet again in 4 weeks' time, the 4th Wednesday in November. Thank you everyone. Good night.